Hello everyone, this will be the last video of this chapter, which is Bhakti Sufi traditions. So in the last video we talked about the growth of Sufism in the Indian subcontinent. In this video we'll be particularly focusing on one such group, which is the Chishti order or the Chishti Silsila. So Chishti order is a Sunni Sufi order whose founder was Abu Ishq Shami. अब कई बार जो ऑर्डर्स का नाम होता था दैट वाज आफ्टर द लीडर ऑफ द ऑर्डर. हाउएवर इन सर्टेन केसेस द नेम ऑफ द ऑर्डर वाज आफ्टर द प्लेस वेयर इट ओरिजिनेटेड. So in the case of Chishti Silsila, it began in Chisht, which is a place in Afghanistan, in the 930 CE. तो इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट में देर आर फोर मेन सूफी ऑर्डर्स. द फर्स्ट ऑफ दीज इज़ द चिश्ती ऑर्डर, देन वी हैव कादरी, then we have Suhrawardi, and then we have Naqshbandiya. Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti was the one who introduced the Chishti order in Ajmer, Rajasthan. That is, he was the one who introduced it in India in the 12th century. So he was 8th in succession after Abu Ishaq Shami. Now, why are Chishtis regarded as the most influential group? This is because firstly, they were able to adapt to the local environment, and secondly, they adopted the features of Indian devotional traditions as well. Now, let's discuss life in the Chishti Khanka with emphasis on Sheikh Nizamuddin. Now, one of the most famous Sufis of Indian subcontinent was Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia. Now, in the last video, we discussed that Khanka or hospice, or the place where the travelers used to lodge or stay, was the center of social life of these communities. So the book gives an example of the Khanka of Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia. So the Khanka comprised of several rooms and had a big hall which was used to offer prayers by the inmates. Then there was a small room on the roof of this big hall where the sheikh used to meet the visitors. It also had an open kitchen which was called the langar, which was funded by charity. Now, the disciples or the followers of these sheikhs were from various backgrounds. For example, there were poets, travelers, merchants, soldiers, and even kings. Sheikh also appointed several spiritual successors and deputed them to set up hospices in various places of the subcontinent. And यही reason था that his influence could spread far and wide, and that too rapidly. Now, in the case of Sufism, हमने देखा that there was this practice of ziyarat or pilgrimage which came into existence. That is, after the death of the sheikh, followers or disciples used to go to his tomb to seek his blessings. One of the most revered shrine is that of Khwaja Moinuddin. He is also known as the Garib Nawaz. And कई historical texts mention करते हैं that rulers like Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Ghiyasuddin Khilji, and even Akbar used to visit his shrine. Then during pilgrimage, the people used to perform sama along with zikr. Sama means listening and zikr means remembrance or reciting and chanting the name. So these Sufi ceremonies include rituals like singing, playing instruments, recitation of poetry, dancing, etc. Now let's discuss the next subtopic, which is languages and communication. Now we've seen that the Sufis adopted to the local traditions or the local surroundings. So they adopted local languages. In Delhi, the people who were associated with the Chishti Silsila, they conversed in Hindavi, which is the language of the common people. Then Baba Farid, who was one of the Sufis, he composed verses in the local languages. So in the Sufi textual traditions, we see an amalgamation of different languages. For example, Dakhni. Now Dakhni was a variant of the Urdu language. That is, Urdu language का ही एक टूटा हुआ रूप जिसमें there was incorporation of some local words as well. So the modes of communication with the divine included sama and zikr, as we have discussed. So musical tradition was an important aspect of Sufism. There were songs which were composed, there were poetry which were made, which included long poems as well as short poems. Then there was a separate genre which was that of qawwalis. Now Amir Khusro, who was one of the most famous poets and musician, he introduced one element to the Chishti Sama, which is that of the call. So this is basically a hymn which is sung at the opening and the closing of a qawwali. Now let's come on to the topic, which is Sufis and the state. That is, what was the relation between the state and Sufis? So although the Sufis maintained distance from the material world, there were times when they accepted grants and donations from the state. Also, it is seen that the sultans, they used to set up trusts, just say they used to fund these communities. The sultans used to grant tax free land to these sects. ये जो उनको ग्रांट्स या डोनेशंस मिलती थी, द सूफीज यूज टू यूज दिस टू fulfill the immediate requirements of the order, that is for the living quarters, for ritual necessities like summer, etc. अब sometimes the rulers also seek legitimation or support or backing from these Sufis. For example, in the case of Turks, तो जब टर्क्स इंडिया में आए एंड दिल्ली सल्तनत की एस्टैब्लिशमेंट हुई, उस टाइम पे द टर्क्स फियर्ड that since majority of their population is non-Muslims, so they might face opposition. तो उस टाइम पे उन्होंने उलेमा को इतनी इम्पोर्टेंस नहीं दी जितनी उन्होंने सूफीज़ को दी. So they sought support from these Sufis in comparison to the ulemas. These were the positive aspects. However, there were conflicts between the Sufis and the rulers as well, because both of them sought moral authority. So one example of this is that both the sultans and the sheikhs, they used to have high sounding titles. For example, Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia को Sultan ul Mashayikh, that is the Sultan amongst sheikhs कहा जाता था. So things like these were not sometimes liked by the rulers, obviously because it would kind of posed a threat to the authority of the ruler. So this is all about Sufis and Chishtis in particular. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is new devotional paths, dialogue and dissent in northern India. Now in this topic we'll talk about three different poet saints, which is Kabir, Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Mirabai. Now let's start with Sant Kabir. So Kabir was a 15th century poet saint. He had appeal among both Hindus and Muslims. अब वो इसलिए because it is believed that he was born as a Hindu but was raised by a Muslim couple. He took elements from both Islamic and Vedantic traditions. It is believed that he was the first Indian saint who kind of coordinated or combined the principles of Hinduism and Islam and gave a universal path which could be followed by both Hindus and Muslims. For example, उन्होंने कुछ सूफी traditions like zikr and ishq borrow किए and then combined it with the Hindu tradition of remembrance of God, that is Naam Simran. Then he described God as Nirankar or Nirgun, that is one which does not have any form or shape. However, he said that God has many names. So he referred God as Allah, Khuda, Hazrat, Peer, Sahib, etc. And Sahib was his favorite word to refer to God. Then he was against the idea of idol worship, that is Murti Puja, and polytheism. Poly means many and theism means belief in God. So he proposed the idea of oneness of God, which is monotheism. Then he was critical of the religious rituals of both Hindus and Muslims. So he was against the concept of sacrifices or image worship, etc. And he believed in devotion to God. तो जो principal idea है, that is love and respect for all, that is love or devotion to God as well as love to other human beings. Also he was against this idea of caste discrimination. Then Saint Kabir के केस में हमारे पास sources of reconstruction क्या हैं? तो जो इनके disciples होते थे, they were both Hindus and Muslims and they were known as Kabir Panthis. तो इन्होंने कबीर के ओरल सर्मन्स को एक रिटन फॉर्म दी है इन द बुक कॉल्ड द कबीर बिजक. This is the best known compilation of Kabir and it is considered as a holy scripture for the followers of the Kabir Panth religion. So this is the first source of reconstruction. Then we have Kabir Granthavali. Then there are compositions which are even found in the Adi Granth Sahib. And lastly we have hagiographies, particularly those within the Vaishnav tradition. Then he has used several languages and particularly his emphasis has been on using simple language which is easily understandable by common people. Another language used by him is the Sant Bhasha, which is the special language of the Nirgun poets. Then the last feature is that he placed emphasis on Guru, that is teacher. तो गुरु को माना जाता है an incarnation of God, that is भगवान का ही एक अवतार, because he is the one who leads the person to the proper path. So historians suggest that Ramanand was the guru of Kabir who led him to this bhakti tradition. So this is all about Kabir. Now let's talk about Baba Guru Nanak. Baba Guru Nanak Dev Ji was also born in the 15th century. He was born in a Hindu family at Nankana Sahib on the bank of river Ravi. Now this place is in present day Pakistan. He was well versed in Persian, Arabic, Hindi and maths. Guru Nanak spent majority of his time in the company of Sufi saints and bhakts. His main teachings are as follows. First, he rejected the religious texts of both Hindus and Muslims. तो कबीर की ही तरह he preached Nirgun Bhakti, that is Bhakti of the Absolute or the Rab as he called him, who did not have any form or gender. He criticized the religious practices like sacrifices, ritual baths, image worship, etc. तो उनका emphasis था on simplicity and remembering and repeating the divine name, that is नाम जपना. तो उनका emphasis था on always remembering God and practicing ceaseless devotion to him by constantly chanting his name. He expressed this through shabd, which were composed in various rags. Further, he organized his followers into a community for congregational or collective worship, which was called the Sangat. So Guru Nanak appointed Angad, that is Guru Angad, as his successor or as the next preceptor or guru. So Guru Angad is the second of the 10 Sikh gurus. So this practice of appointing gurus or the preceptor went on for nearly 200 years. तो अब Guru Nanak did not want to establish a different or a new religion, but after his death, इनके जो followers थे, they consolidated their own practices and distinguished themselves from the Hindus and the Muslims. So this led to the establishment of a new religion, which is Sikhism. So Guru Arjan, who was the 5th guru of the 10 Sikh gurus, he compiled the hymns by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, his 4 successors, Kabir, Baba Farid and Ravidas. So these hymns were called Gurbani, that is Guruon ki Bani, and were consolidated in the Adi Granth Sahib. Then in the late 17th century, Guru Gobind Singh, who was the 10th Sikh Guru, इन्होंने सब गुरुओं की टीचिंग्स को कंसोलिडेट किया इन दी गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब, which is the holy scripture of Sikhism. He also laid down the foundation of a Khalsa Panth, which is the army of the pure, and this Khalsa Panth has 5 symbols. So these 5 symbols are uncut hair, dagger, that is katar, a pair of shorts, comb and a steel bangle. So this is all about Guru Nanak. We see that there are a lot of similarities in the teachings of Baba Guru Nanak Dev Ji and Sant Kabir. For example, both of them were against idol worship. Both of them were against superstitions. Then both of them worked towards bringing Hindus and Muslims at par and remove any sort of differentiation or discrimination between them. Then both talked about equality of humans, which is evident from practices like the langar, that is eating together, wherein there is no discrimination among people. And lastly, both of them talked about a bhakti path, that is devotion to God, in particular devotion to a single absolute power. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is Mirabai. So Mirabai was a 15th century celebrated bhakti saint. She left her matrimonial home and devoted her life to Lord Krishna. Rai Das, who is an important Indian poet saint, again of the 15th-16th century, he was her preceptor, that is her guru. Her main teachings include that every human is equal, all human beings are the children of God, and thus she fought against the caste system. She also believed in the idea that God is one. So the primary contribution of Mirabai is by way of her music. She wrote thousands of songs in the praise of God. Now, the last topic which we have is reconstructing histories of religious traditions. तो religious traditions की reconstruction भी number of sources से होती है. The most important of these is the textual traditions, which include accounts, books, etc. Then we have engravings, architecture, inscriptions, sculpture, oral traditions like stories, fables, etc. तो हिस्ट्री की रिकन्स्ट्रक्शन बहुत ही अलग अलग सोर्सेज से होती है. हाउएवर द बेस्ट अप्रोच इज़ टेकिंग ऑल ऑफ दीज सोर्सेज together, that is following a holistic approach. So I'm not elaborating on these topics because throughout the chapter we've seen number of examples of these sources. So that's all for this chapter. Thank you so much for watching.